Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for tuning into another guitar lesson. Alright, today I'd like to talk about a very important concept in bluegrass guitar known as the G run. That thing right there, okay? So this is a really cool thing. It uses some notes from the G major pentatonic scale, and we also add in the flat third. Which we learned about the E minor pentatonic scale, and we learned that that was the same thing as the G major pentatonic scale. And we also learned that when we play E minor, we can add in the flat fifth, which is a blue note. Okay, happens to be right here on the first fret of the A string. So we can actually use that same note in G major pentatonic. It's not the flat fifth anymore now, it's called the flat third, which is another type of blue note. So anyhow, we're not going to go too deep into the theory of that. We'll do that another time. That is important to understand this concept of blue notes and how we can add tension into our major and minor pentatonic scales. But today we're just going to learn this lick, the G run, and I'll talk a little bit about a few different ways we can do it. So the main reason that we use this, in my opinion, is to break up some of the monotony of G. If we're playing a song like Will the Circle Be Unbroken, for instance. It ends on a G chord and then it starts on a G chord. Okay, so there's the ending G chord and then there's the beginning G chord that happened. So this lick will really kind of help us demonstrate that we've started over the tune. Kind of demarcates that the tune is started over. Just kind of gives us a little thing to let the listener know that we've repeated now. Now we're playing through the same chord progression again, and it started over, right? So that would be something like this. Let's see. Better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. I was standing. Okay, kind of breaks it up a little bit, kind of gives us a signal. It can be helpful for people you're playing with if you're at a jam, especially people who are less experienced players. If you do things like that, it can help everybody stay on the same page. So it's sort of like an audio cue that we've started over. And that's not the only reason. I'm just kind of theorizing that is a use for it for sure, but it also just sort of sounds cool, okay? So we don't always have to do it at the end of the form. We can do it in other places too. Basically, we need two measures of a G chord. Any place we have two measures of a G chord, technically we can do this. And we're going to have to use our taste though, because it won't work, well, it might work in a sense, but it won't be as tasteful any old place that we have two measures of G chords. We have to be judicious with how we decide which two measures of G to use it. But in theory, any two measures of G will work because that's how long this lick takes. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So we need one to do the actual lick, and then we need another measure for the landing note. Okay? We might even strum after that landing note if we want to as well. Okay, great. So the first one is really just the end of the full G lick. So we'll learn the full G run in a moment here, but it always ends with this. Okay? See, I can add on other stuff before that, but we really... So to me, that's the main one. You can hear Lester Flatt do this one a lot, okay? And just no frills, none of the fancy stuff, just the essential G run, in my opinion, is that right there. So that's the note E on my second fret of D to my open G string. And we usually do a nice rest stroke with a down pick on that G. So we really want that to pop, stand out loudly, okay? So that's going to be the first one we're going to do. So in example number 1, we're going to play a measure of G. We're going to double the G in the bass as opposed to playing a D in the bass with an alternating bass boom chuck because the next chord we have is D, okay? So I'm pretending this is the end of a form that went G, D, back to G for two measures. Okay, that's example number 1. So we have one measure of G where we double the bass note. one measure of D with alternating bass. And then this G run, we're just going to do the end of the full one we'll learn later on. We're just going to do that. So that we're going to start out with a boom chuck, and I like to do an up there on the and of 3. 1, 2, 3, and I do a quick upstroke there. 4, 1. Okay, so this note is on beat 4. That note has to be on beat 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3. Do a little strums like that if we want to, or just end it. Okay, I think this one's pretty simple. Hopefully you think it's pretty simple too, especially if you're already familiar with the boom chuck pattern. Please watch my lessons on boom chuck if you haven't seen those yet, okay? This is just kind of adding to that, and we're ornamenting that idea a little bit and breaking up some of all that boom chuck with some other stuff, okay? Why don't we go ahead and try this one together? But quickly I want to point out, if that up on the and of 3 is a little bit difficult, you can actually just leave that one out and you can do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so that's an option for some of you if you find that a little bit difficult, but I do think it sounds a little bit nicer when we put an up on the and of 3. 1, 2, 3, and I just like that better personally, so I threw that one in there. But if for some reason you find that to be the challenging part, it's not really that necessary. You can just do a big old bass note, big old strum, wait for it till beat 4, and that's a fine way to do this as well. Okay, but I'm going to play it as written here in example number 1, which I'll display on the screen, and you can also download at my website. Okay, all right, let's try it together. Example number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did a little boom shakalaka at the end, okay? Great job. Okay, in example number 2, this is one that my guitar teacher, Martin Gilmore, showed me. So Martin is a good friend and mentor that I studied with, and he said that this is more of a traditional sort of way of doing it, and this is the way he does it. And I'm just going to show you this way, and this isn't really one that I use all the time. I kind of mix and match these. Every song has a different vibe, a different feeling, a different groove. So we want to be loose with our interpretation of these G runs and be able to be flexible with them and change them just a little bit here and there to make sure that they fit the groove of the song. So this one is great for certain songs and not as good for other songs, in my opinion. But in Martin's opinion, this is the really traditional way to do it, and he has a great video on his YouTube channel about that. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. So please check that out. I think you'll glean a lot more insight into having him explain it. But this is the way I remember him explaining it to me, where we're going to go boom, and he kind of hangs there, and he moves his finger right over here. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1. Sounds good fast. So I'm kind of hearing that. I kind of slide by this and I hear that a little bit, and we'll play that note in the next example. But Martin, the way he explains it, he doesn't really play that note. He hangs on this one, and then he just kind of moves his finger straight to the 2nd fret of D, and he does the last part, right? That's the important part again. So basically we're just adding on a couple of notes down here, the G in the bass, the open A string, that 1st fret, then we jump right to the 2nd fret of D, and we do that ending lick that we talked about, the essential part of the G lick that we learned in the first example. Alright, so in example number 2 we're going to do measure of G, measure of D, and then we'll do the lick we just talked about. Okay? And I have it notated here. I don't think the timing that I use is exactly accurate. I think this is supposed to be more of a feel thing, okay? So be a little bit liberal with your interpretation of the rhythm and really try to get the feeling of this one down, okay? But let's go ahead and try that together. This is example number 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. To me, that one sounds a little bit odd slowly like that, so I'm going to play it again for you a little bit faster. Try to keep up if you can. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. See how I hang up? hung out on the open A for a while that time too, okay? So again, the feel of the song will sort of dictate that stuff. I prefer not to think about it too much personally and let my ear guide me to exactly how long to do all that stuff, okay? Yeah, but that's a cool one, okay? Kind of an old, more traditional one, kind of an old-timey one. Sometimes the other ones that I'll show you I think about as being a little bit more slick, a little bit more modern perhaps, something like that. But this is a really good kind of down-home one. Okay, cool, I like that one. All right, so in our next example, this is the one that I really use more often, I think, and I think it's a little bit more slick, a little bit more modern, fits with more of the songs that I happen to play, so I just kind of find myself doing this one more often personally. So in this one, I'm going to let you hear that second fret. Rather than he kind of ghosts through, it's kind of the same thing that Martin does, but he's sort of ghosting this second fret and spending more time on the open A and this first fret note, and he kind of goes right to it. But this way we're actually going to go, and we're going to slide to the second fret and let you hear that. Okay, so after that, so we start with the bass note on G, open A, 1, 2, and then slide, okay? So I'm doing an up on the first fret here, down, down on open A, up on the first fret, then a slide. That's where a down would have gone, so if I want to keep with alternate picking, my next note is an up. So that's going to be an open D. Then we land here on the E note on the second fret of D, and then we land on the open G. Okay, so that ending part, right? That's what I showed you in the first example. That's kind of the essential part of this. Now we've just kind of added more notes before that happens, okay? Yeah, so this one is different than Martin's in the fact that it slides and plays the second fret. It's also different than Martin's because it plays the open D string before we do this part. Okay, so it's a little bit different. The cool thing about this one is that every note of the G major pentatonic scale with an added note here, the flat third. That's every note of it. We're just playing it really fast. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, so again, we're going to do the same way to get into this. We're going to do one measure of G where we don't alternate the bass. We do the G and the bass both times for that measure. Then D with alternating bass, and then we'll get into it. That's it. Simple as that. Let's try that together, okay? Example number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, let's try that a bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do a strum at the end, do a bunch of strums at the end if you want. I didn't notate that because that's not really the point. And again, please keep these sort of fluid and flexible in your mind because you're going to be able to use these in lots of different songs and lots of different places within each song, and you're going to want to use your discretion on lots of things like this. So I don't want to make it too overly specific because it will depend, and it will really be about your taste, and it's important that you develop your taste of where to use these and how to use these. So yeah, I didn't notate that, but if it feels weird or just let that G hang, go ahead and strum a G chord when you're done, okay? That's probably what you'll usually do, because once we do this, we got to jump back on rhythm, right? We don't want a rhythm to fall out too long. We already went, a whole measure of... So getting back into it on that second measure of the G run, I think is a pretty good idea. So I'll let you experiment with that. In example number 1, I notated a way that could work with the boom shakalaka thing. So feel free to do it that way, or just one strum, or no strums, whatever you want. But I'm going to let you be in the driver's seat with that. Okay? All right, so the last example is almost identical to example number 3, but we're going to go back to the open D before we go to the open G string. So instead of this, so that was 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1. So we had a quarter note here on beat 4, 4, 1, which is arguably a more traditional way to do it, because in example number 1, I said that's kind of the essential part of the line, right? So this way, it almost breaks up that, because instead of playing a quarter note here and then doing that the right way, we just kind of added stuff before that really essential one from example 1. In this one, we're going to do it a little bit different because of that open D string. But it's kind of nice. It fills it up rhythmically, and I kind of like this one. And this just happens to come out of my fingers a lot when I play this. I end up doing this. So I'm just going to do a pull off on to the open D. That's literally it. That's the only difference between example number 3 and 4. So slowly, that's what it sounds like. I had a little pull off in there. Now all the rhythms are filled up. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Just kind of, sometimes you want that, sometimes you really want 4, 1, and you really want that 4 to be bigger and longer of a note to really kind of have more impact. Other times maybe you won't want that, because if you don't make 4 have more impact, when you get to 1, that one's going to have a lot more impact, right? Now that one really stands out. Okay, so again, all about taste, all about preference, all about the song you're playing, okay? Different songs will call for different ones of these, even though that's a very happy to glad change, as my dad would say, which means not much has really changed at all. Even though it's a very small change, there will be certain songs where one will be more appropriate than the other, and I might share some thoughts on that if we get into specific songs where we're using these, but again, I want you to develop your ear, your own taste, and judgment about that. Okay? All right, let's try this one together. Example number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. A little bit quicker. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's try out how this would fit in Circle Be Unbroken now that we've learned this. I was standing by my window on a cold and cloudy day. Snuck one in there. See that? That was the first one, okay? I didn't even know I was going to do that, honestly. It just felt right, and I threw it in. Let's keep going. I'll throw one in at the end, too. When I saw that hearse come rolling for to carry my mother away. That was example number 3 that I did. That one just felt right. Again, I didn't think this out or plan what I was going to do. I just kind of feel it. When it comes around, you feel it in your heart about which one to choose. So that's why it's important to practice all these and have them all right at your fingertips. So when you go, hey, I know, you'll want a certain sound, and it will just come out, and you won't have to think about it. It'll be totally natural when you do it right. Okay? And that might be a little far off for some of you if you're a little bit newer to the guitar, so be patient, take your time, and realize that that's the goal, though. Okay? All right, well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this course, and I look forward to seeing you in another guitar lesson really soon. Thanks again. Goodbye.